It's time for the quarterback with Gunny Signs.
How's it going, everybody? And I hope everybody had an awesome week this week. Well, since last week, we left off, we were talking about the arrival of getting there to 5th Battalion, 11th Marines down there in Camp Pendleton, California. So far, it's been quite an adventure since graduating from recruit training, MCT, SOI, all those things, and finally arriving there in your first duty station now that you are a active duty United States Marine. So just like most of you, you know, the adventure is different for everybody. So we had arrived down there, checked into battalion. We were already checking in with the sergeant major, the battalion commander, and we knew who our battery commander was going to be, as well as we've already met our battery gunnery sergeant. So that was quite an adventure. So the next step is down there that we were back in the barracks. So let's talk a little bit about the barracks. Okay, some of you probably remember that in the barracks, it is a very, very different environment because a bunch of Marines living there. And, you know, as you know, Marines are Marines. They're going to do whatever they want to do. So here we are finding ourselves, you know, walking down the catwalk down there. And, you know, as you know, it's nothing but concrete down the catwalk. And you can hear footsteps coming all the way down there. You can hear them as you walk down. And of course, we're sitting there walking down the catwalk on with our chloroforms and stuff and everything. So, you know, you can hear us coming down and everything. And I remember because they took me down there, and since we were down there, you know, on the second deck, and I was living with another one of the Marines that we just got there, so it was quite interesting in those rooms. Now, luckily for us, we had barracks rooms. You know, for the most part, you know, up until this point, we all had open squad bays, and that's where we ended up living, and that's where we stayed. So kind of different just having yourself and a roommate, and that was all that you had. But that came with a lot of surprises as well. Because, you know, as we all know, when you're in a barracks room, you're expected to be living there in a certain way. And that means that, you know, every Thursday you got to field day the room, you got to pass inspections. And especially with the NCOs made it clear that your room would always be basically spotless whenever they came and checked the room. Now, I remember back then, this was back in 1990, well, it was 1996 now, since I had just spent that Christmas, New Year's down there in North Carolina. So we were down there in 96, and I remember back then there were still a lot of the veterans that were there, or not veterans, well, they're veterans now. But back then, they were all active duty service members that had just came back from Operation Desert Shield, Desert Storm. So they had their own mentality of, you know, what it was down to be in the Corps. So they were salt dogs, in other words. They had been into combat and everything. And here we are, a bunch of brand new guys that had never seen combat before. And we had to deal with their wrath of their mentality and what they've gone through and everything. Let's talk about our barracks room a little bit. Now, our barracks down there, like I mentioned to you guys, was right across the street from a big parking lot. Now, this parking lot, you know, all those Marines that could afford to have a car had a car there. And since we were up there in the second deck, you know, as new joints, we were told there's no way you're going to buy a car. You are not going to buy a car as a PFC or as a Lance Corporal because, first of all, you're not going to be able to afford it. You're living out there in California. As we all know, in California, heck, the insurance rates for a young individual is freaking heinous. It costs a lot of money just to have a car down there because even back then, gas prices were always a lot more expensive down there in California than they actually were anywhere else. So we had to talk with our NCOs. They told us that if we were even considering and buying a car, that we had to take it, talking to them, let them know that we wanted to buy a vehicle, and also we would have to talk to our staff NCOs and explain to them what our plan was in order for us to actually buy a car, because we've all heard the stories. We heard of the stories of those new PFCs or Lance Corporals that go off in the weekend. They buy a car, they come back and talk to their staff NCOs, say, I just bought a car, here's my contract, and they come back paying like about 80% interest, and this car is like a 10-year-old vehicle with like 200,000 miles on it. You know, and it happens to everybody. You know, there's always a young Marine that wants to buy this 10-year-old Ford Mustang or whatever kind of vehicle just because it's a Mustang, they want to have it. But they're not going to be able to afford the insurance. They're not going to be able to put gas in it. and they pretty much got screwed over with the interest rate that they're going to be paying for this car. So let's get back on track. We're talking about vehicles and everything, and we'll get into those later with a couple of stories of a couple of Marines and everything that dealt with those things back then. So the room in the barracks. Okay, it's a catwalk up there on the second floor, and you have a little like a wall, keeping you from jumping off of the second deck down there from the barracks rooms. And you go into the room, there's a solid brown door that is in front of the room. There's a window there so you can actually see in the rooms. It is a double paned window, so it just slides forward and backwards. So at least you're able to get some air, if you're inside the room. Now, this is Camp Pendleton, California. They do not believe in having air conditioning in the barracks. We don't know why, but they don't want to have any kind of air conditioning down there in the barracks because they assume that it is cool enough down there in Oceanside, California, since you're close to the beach, that you don't have to have any air conditioning. Man, some of those days that we're down there, you regret not having AC because it's humid and it does get hot, whether you believe it or not. It gets hot down there in the coastline and you got to deal with it. I mean, they did buy us some of those little fans that you just put on the ground and it spins around, but those fans don't make enough ventilation to keep you cool in the room. So as soon as you walk into the room, there are 2 sets of bunk beds that are there in the room, and they're pretty much up against the wall, one on one side, one on the other side, and that is where you sleep. So you got to decide, do you want the top bunk or do you want the bottom? Now, since there was only 2 of us there in the room, we pretty much both took the bottom bunks on each side, and that is where we decided that we wanted to sleep. Now, towards the back of the room, there was a little counter where there was 1 sink. You had, space on the bottom for all kinds of cleaning gear and those things down there in the bottom. There was also 2 wall lockers that were placed in the rooms. Now, these were actually built into the room, so it's kind of like a closet or a cupboard that was down there. And each of us had one. There was actually 4 of them there, 2 on each side of this little piece of wall that was down towards the back, right along the same walls as where the sink were. So each of us got 2 of them, and we were able to actually put our stuff in there and organize everything. Now, in these wall lockers, you're expected to actually have all your uniforms hanging up there. Now, I know everybody remembers that in those barracks rooms, you have to have a wall locker set up pretty much ready to go ahead and have an inspection. You have to have your skivvy drawers all folded up, skivvy shirts folded up 6x6, all those things to make sure that they were all ready to be inspected. Your uniforms were hanging there pretty much in order from your dress blues, your alphas, your long sleeve shirts, short sleeve shirts, and then you start going in the same order, but with the trousers, the greens, the blues, all those in order all the way down, and then same thing with the camis. Tops were one side, bottoms on the other side. Your shoe display there underneath the racks, had all this stuff placed on there, pretty much everything that you were actually shown while you were down there in recruit training. If you think about it, I know some of you can have flashbacks and remember those days of having your heels aligned with the edge of the rack. And yeah, of course, it brings back memories for everybody that we start thinking about things like that. But then across the little hallway there where the wall lockers were next to the sink was another door. That led to the actual bathroom. Now, the bathroom is pretty simple. Then you walk inside, the toilet's right there in front of you. You have a toilet, you have a wall, you have a towel rack on the right-hand side, and you have a shower. Yes, a shower. There is no bathtub, so you're not soaking in there in the shower and all those things. So you get into the shower, and as soon as you're in there and you're shown the room, the NCOs kind of walk you and show you where everything's at. And the first thing they tell you is like, here's your shower. We expect you to keep it clean. And by the way, don't forget, we don't want you putting any babies down the drain. Some of you got that. Some of you understand what I mean when they said that. So that's what the room kind of looked like. And, we were kind of excited because we had our own room. We knew where we were going to be sleeping. And we had already discussed it that we were going to make sure that our room was going to be the cleanest one that was there in the whole battery. But little did we know that, everybody has their room there. It said they're supposed to be the cleanest one. But, of course, there's always going to be somebody that's going to find something wrong with your room, no matter what you do to actually keep it as clean as you possibly can. So we were finally settled in there, had our stuff. The NCOs left us there for a little while to go ahead and organize our stuff, put everything away to make sure that, we were kind of in there. They told us that there was going to be a formation at 16:30 or 4:30 p.m. for those of you that are on civilian time now, that we had to make sure that we were there and we were going to be in our camis. Now, I remember back then we just had tricolor camis. There was no such thing as desert and greens, kind of like there is today. So we got our stuff down there. It was sleeves down because it was kind of cold outside, so we weren't rolling our sleeves or anything because it was just during the summertime that you roll sleeves up. So we got dressed, got all those things, and we pretty much started organizing our things, but we stayed in boots and utes. Okay, yeah, that's your green ski. Well, it was brown skivvy shirts back then. I'm talking about green. That's what we had now. We had our brown skivvy shirts, our trousers, our web belts. Yes. And we all remember we used to wear the web belts. There was no such thing as map belts like everybody has now. There was no tan, green, gray, black belts, nothing like that. Everybody wore a web belt. That is what we had. We wore that. And our boots, we decided to wear our jungle boots because there was no standard of what you were required to wear every single day. You pretty much decided what kind of boots that you wanted to wear for that day, as long as they were polished and they were clean. They really didn't care about that stuff. So all our stuff is organized, put in there, and then we go ahead and head out there by the battery office again. They took us down there, and again, they marched us down there once we got there. So it was about 1600, and we heard a knock on the door. It was our NCO. So like, let's go, get out, let's go. It's time to get out the formation. So they got us out there in our small little formation, and we headed down there to battalion where the battery office was. We get down there, our battery commander, he let everybody know that we had some new joins that were now part of the battery to make sure that they welcomed us. They taught us what they needed to know, so we understood how we needed to conduct ourselves there in the battery, and to make sure that we understood everything that they did on a daily basis. We were finally introduced more in depth with our platoon sergeants. We got to meet our platoon commander, this young second lieutenant that had just basically gotten to the fleet and really didn't know anything else. In other words, it was just basically a officer version of a PFC that they think they know everything, but they really don't. We got all of our introductions and everything. Now remember, it's a Friday. Okay, we got there on a Friday, so we had our formation, and then they were going to sound Liberty Call to pretty much let everybody go for the weekend. So we're going to have the weekend off now. What the heck am I going to do? We had no car. We didn't know anybody. We were just there. So basically just all six of us that got there together, we pretty much hung out there the weekend. And it wasn't really hanging out either because, the duty NCOs that were there, all they kept was coming down there to our rooms, grabbing us, saying, I need a working party. I need you to go police call this, pick this up, go out there and clean this, clean that. So we were pretty much a working party for the whole entire weekend there while we were there in the barracks. So pretty much we decided that, hey, you know what? Next weekend we're going to find something to do. We're going to get out of here. We're going to find out where we can go, what we can do, what exactly is around here. We had no idea what was around there. We were close to Oceanside, California, and we really had no idea what that meant, what was there or what kind of even restaurants or food we can get out there. For the most part, all we were doing, we were issued that a meal card to eat at the chow hall, and we had to eat there. We had no other options of actually eating anywhere else, and that's where we had to eat. So the whole week, went by there. Monday morning, we got up in the morning at 5. We had PT or physical training every single morning that we did there with our platoons and the battery. So we got very acquainted with our platoon sergeant and our series commander. Here I am thinking about going back there to recruit training, thinking about a series commander. Yeah, wishful thinking, right? Have that flashback, talking about those things over there. So they pretty much wanted to run us to death. That's what we realized. We run there and back. That's all we did. We ran a mile here, 2 miles here, 3 miles here. I think the longest one that we actually did, he had us do like an 8-mile run one time. And, I guess back then you're young, you don't really care. You kind of just deal with it. And you do what you got to do and run and make it. So, the week went by. We went down there, got to see where our gun park was. That's where we kept the howitzers. Back then we were still using the 155 millimeter howitzer. That was the big boy, 16,000 pounds, nice big heavy guy that never really broke for anything. It's one of the toughest guns that we had that never really broke. It's not like the ones that we have now that, they're all digital and sensitive. They have feelings and they break and they work when they want to work. And, we didn't have that problem back then. We had this beast that pretty much you can beat it up with a sledgehammer and it would work better. It wouldn't break or anything. You would just give it a good knock with that sledge and get it to work and everything. We were showed where all that was, where we kept our guns, and we were assigned to one of the gun sections that were down there in the battery. Now, in a battery, you have 6 howitzers. So we have 6 different sections that are assigned there. And, a battery has 6. Then you got the battalion. We had 3 batteries in each battalion, so we had a total of 18 guns for a battalion that we had to be able to use in case we need to use them, during a combat situation or whenever we went out there and did some kind of training. That's what we had. So we were assigned to ours. I was assigned to gun number 3. Okay, and I'll explain that to you guys here a little bit more. Now, gun number 3, we were the center gun, so we were what we call the base of the battery. We were always the base piece, as they called it. We were the ones that were right in the center, and they would use us as the base and bring all the rounds in to the center of the battery to make sure that we were able to hit target on steel. I was introduced to my section chief. Now, I won't tell you his name, okay, but he was known as the Warden. That's how they knew him. So our gun 3, was known as Cell Block 3. And I'll explain that to you guys why. Most staff NCOs back then, you knew how they were. They wanted to make sure they ran their sections or their guns or their platoons, whatever, in the best possible way they could. Our section chief was a prior hat. He was a prior drill instructor, was out there in the drill field doing his thing, came back, and that's who we had. So if you think about it, even when I think about it, when I came back from the drill field, my mentality was a lot different than what anybody else's was, because I wanted to run things the way that I did them down there in the drill field. And that was his mentality. He wanted to stick to the T, by the book, do everything exactly the way it needed it to be, and he expected it to be done now. Not, take your time and do it, nothing. He wanted everything to be done on time, exactly the way it needed to be done. And as soon as we pulled into any kind of gun position, there were certain things that needed to be done. He had a checklist that he had taped to the back of the tailgate of the 5-ton truck that we did, or that we had to follow it exactly in order to make sure that we had it. I mean, this guy even had a rake that he took with us when we went to the field. Now, if you think about it, what the heck is an artillery unit going to do with a damn rake when they get out to the field? He expected us to rake the dirt inside the trails where the gun opened up to make sure that it was perfectly free of any kind of rocks or anything, and it pretty much was beautified. So if any of you have ever seen one of those Japanese gardens where they have the little rake where they go back and forth to make sure it's perfect, that's kind of what it looked like. Now, we used to hate that because every time, especially when we went out to 29 Palms to do any kind of fire missions or shoot out there, every time we shot that very first round, because of the concussion and the blowback from the howitzer, all that dirt just went up straight in the air. There was no rocks to hold the dirt down, nothing like that. So, we looked like freaking chocolate-covered cookies because first of all, we were sweating. And all you could really see from everybody was freaking our teeth in our eyes. Well, not even our teeth, though, because they were covered in dirt, so we had chocolate-covered teeth, too. Oh, well, we made sure that our stuff was squared away and it was clean. That's the way he wanted it done, so we made sure that we did it. Till this day, I kind of thank him the way that he ran everything, because he made sure that we understood why we did what we did and why we were one of the fastest guns that we had there in the battery, that nobody could really do anything faster than we could, because he had a certain procedure that he had to be done. And, as a lot of times those things become muscle memory, and, you learn how to do them, and that's the way it's going to stick. And you do that every single time. Before you know it, you can do it without even knowing that you're actually doing it, because you have certain specific jobs that you have to do. Now, for me, it was kind of different when I got there to the section, because remember I talked about that I was able to get my license to drive the 5 tons while I was still down there in Oklahoma in Fort Sill. So I had my license, and we had those 813 trucks that we still had down there in the fleet when I first got there. So those were the 5-ton trucks that, they were manual transmission. They had gears. You had to shift all those things, and that's what we pulled the guns with out there in the fleet. Now, by no means, that truck can pull the gun, but when it comes to stopping, that howitzer pushed that truck if you had to stop in a quick and hurry. It would go ahead and, pull it forward, but that's what we had So we had to make it work. So I had the great opportunity to be able to ride in the front with our section chief every time that we moved. Now let me tell you, when you think about a backseat driver, oh my gosh, that's what it was. This and that, and do it this way, and why are you doing this, and go here, go there, don't shift now, turn your steering wheel a little bit this way, the gun's going too far that way. That was the kind of stuff that I had when I was driving. But again, he did it for a reason. He had a method to his madness, and that just helped me to make sure that I became a better Marine and a better person there. And it was because of him that I did all these many years that I spent in the Corps, because of the way that he made sure that I understood everything that had to be done while we were there doing the mission that we had to do. So for that, I thank him, because if that wasn't the case, then I probably would have gotten out after my first enlistment and not even looked back at the Marine Corps for anything else. Okay, so that's what it was with our sections. That's kind of what it was with our chiefs and all the other Marines. Now, I had in our sections, we had anywhere between 6 to 12 Marines that actually manned the gun. We had the minimum amount, which was 6, and then we had, the maximum amount. You can have pretty much as many as you needed, but we kept it at 12 to make sure that we were able to get that gun in place and get the rounds down range and do the support that we needed to do to our infantry brothers or air, whatever it was, or who we were supporting at that time. So let's get back now to talking back down there by the barracks and after the formation. So that's what we did when we went out to the field. Now, again, Friday we got there, had the whole entire week of PT, classes, getting to know all the rest of the Marines that were there, and now it was finally Friday. Now, we had started doing our research throughout the week, finding out, hey, how can we get off the base? Where can we go? How far are we allowed to go during the weekends once we go? So we found out that we could actually go out in town and, go to the restaurants, go to the stores, all those things. We found out that there was a mall that was out there in Oceanside, and then down there by the coast, there was actually some restaurants, a couple of little shops and everything down there in downtown Oceanside right there. But we had to take the bus. Now, back then, we took the infamous 305. That's the one that went down there back-to-back camps to Las Pulgas, Flores, and took you all the way out there to Oceanside Bus Depot. So we got very familiar with the 305. We got on the bus, and we headed downtown, got able to see everything that was around there. And as we were driving down there from Las Flores, heading out there to the actual bus depot down there in Oceanside, a lot of the Marines that were with me, some of them went down there to MCRD San Diego down there for recruit training. So they recognized some of the things that were around there. They're like, hey, wait a second. Those are the barracks that we stayed at when we came down there and did our field training. They were talking about the Edson Range, which is where the recruits came down to actually do the rifle range and do their field training down there for the month that they left MCRD San Diego. So yeah, they bussed them down on the bus and they took them down there, and you can actually see the barracks and the platoons marching around there from the road that we were on from the bus. So that was pretty interesting to know that they had some of the recruit training facilities there as well on board of Camp Pendleton. So we headed out in town. Now, the bus pretty much took the same route that the first bus took when they first brought us down there from the airport in San Diego, California. We headed out down there, down Vandergrift Road again, headed out the main gate, and then they took us out there to the bus depot, which was actually down there in downtown Oceanside, California. So we get there, we get off the bus, and we're like, man, this is nice. You can hear the ocean, you can see all kinds of stuff and everything there. We walked around for a while, and, typical boots, walking around, our shirts tucked in a belt, no matter what kind of shirt we were wearing, a little backpack, and we had our moto shirts on, USMC, all those things. That's what we wore because that's what we knew, and that's what we were going to be able to actually have going out there. Now, all of us had our little war bag, our little backpacks that we had with the Eagle Open Anchor. So everybody around there knew that we were free new Marines or boots that were just going out there. Now, we walked around. There's a lot of ice cream shops. There was a lot of beach. We headed down there to the beach, and we decided to go sit down there on one of the benches and just kind of hang out. And then we got hungry. We're like, hey man, we need to find something to eat. So we started walking around and everything else. And then we walked down by the pier, walked out across the street from the pier, and there it was. This was the first time that I was introduced to Colima's Mexican restaurant. Let me tell you. Okay, those of you that have been down there to Camp Pendleton, I know a lot of you that listen to me have been down there. And those of you that are new, that really don't know what it is, you have no idea what you're missing. Now, this restaurant is just a simple, small restaurant. It's nothing big. It's like a taco shop, and they sell burritos, all kinds of food there. But you go there, the carne asada burritos that they sell there. Oh my gosh, these things are amazing. So shout out to Colima's down there in Oceanside, California. You've been keeping Marines happy for many, many, many years. So these burritos, you go in there and you ask them for a carne asada burrito with everything. Now, with everything for me, that's the carne asada. It has beans, the sour cream, the tomatoes, the onions, and they'll even put rice in it for you if you want. For me, rice in a burrito, it's not quite my thing, so I get it without rice. But these burritos, if you look at your forearm, these burritos, and I'm not kidding you, they're about almost a foot long and have a diameter of about 3 to 4 inches of stuff inside of these things. And wow, man, just thinking about it right now, my mouth is getting all watery because it's been a while. Haven't been able to go down there to Oceanside for a little while now, for about, I guess, 5 or 6 months, if not longer, now that this pandemic is still going on right now. So we're not really able to actually go down there. But these burritos were delicious. They are delicious. I'm not saying they're still there. It's one of the things that, if you ever get a chance to go down there to Oceanside or come back to visit or something, you have to go down there. It's on Pier Boulevard. Pier Boulevard down there in Oceanside, California. It's right across the street down there from a lot of the dry cleaners. Those of you that haven't gone there in years, you remember that it was really on the opposite side of, I think it was ABC Cleaners. I'm not really sure the name of it. I know Dorothy's is one on the corner there, and the other one is across the street. It used to be right across the street down there from the other dry cleaners. Well, they moved down the road a little bit. They're a little bit closer down there towards the beach or towards the water, and they got a bigger space where they have the restaurant at now. The food hasn't changed. Quality's still the same, and it's great and it's delicious. So those of you that have never gone down there, take some time whenever you go down, visit down there, San Diego area or Oceanside down there. Take a little break. Go down there, get yourself a burrito. It's not just burritos out there. They have all kinds of other kind of food, tacos, fried fish, carne asada fries. They even have those famous California burritos that everybody loves out there. I don't know what they see in those things. To me, why do you want a burrito with French fries inside of it? But people like it, so that's what they make. Whatever sells, right? So this is where we ate, and we were kind of excited because we were actually able to get some semi-authentic Mexican food now that we were down here in the West Coast, and it was great for all those of us that that love to eat Mexican food. Now, there was 3 of us that were down there that were Hispanic, and the other 3, we had actually 2 of the other Marines, were Caucasian, and we had our black brother with us as well that was there. So all of us were there eating some chow, and everybody loved the food. This is definitely somewhere that we knew that we were going to keep coming back to because this food was delicious. And let me tell you, for the whole entire time that I was active duty, for the 20 plus years that I served in the service, I continued to go back. Even when I was down there in Camp Lejeune for the 4 years that I was down there towards the East Coast, every time we came back down to visit family, you better believe it, that I went there when I first got there, went down there in the middle when I was there, and before I left, I went back there and ate there at the restaurant. So we started having our adventures down there in Oceanside, California, and we had a blast. It was good to be able to get to a new area and get to know some more different people. So our life was starting to change a little bit down there because now we had our barracks room. We had a little bit of freedom to go ahead and enjoy our liberty now that we were on active duty. So, it's good to be able to talk to you guys again this week and be able to share some of those fun facts and stories that, are starting to happen and get better as the weeks go by. Again, I appreciate you guys sticking with me, being able to listen to me here every single week. And do not forget that you can listen to my podcast here on Podbean or on the Apple Podcast app. They're posted every Thursday, so you can take a look at us, listen there for a new episode. Again, if you have any questions or anything, send us a message. So again, thank you for listening this week. This is Miguel, the Gunny Signs, sounding Liberty Call.